Soulbound, Book 1. Sample reading by Kira A. McFadden. Chapter 1. Eddie. The strain on Eddie's back grew as the Ekram bolted through the forest. Eddie darted between the trees, careful to hug the shadows lest sunlight sear sensitive skin. Every breath tasted of blood and tore at Eddie's throat, but the Ekram couldn't rest. To stop was to die. Eddie tripped on a rock, and hard earth struck the Ekram's face. The sheathed blade rammed Eddie in the ribs, and the Ekram moaned. Eddie would have left the sword behind months ago had it not been enchanted. Most Ekra had little use for physical weapons, for instead of blades and firearms, they battled with magic. The smell of pine mulch wafted from the ground, turning bitter under the dry scent of dawn. Eddie lay still for a moment, gasping as the aching body begged the Ekram to rise, to stagger and flee the blinding sun, but sharp pain sprang up the leg the moment it shifted. Eddie groaned while struggling to stand. The ankle had been sprained, no doubt, and Eddie sent part of the blood mite to the injured foot rather than take time to tend the wound. Skin and muscle tingled, and the slightest of twitches strummed along the leg as the Ekram's blood mite worked. Blood mites, masses of congealed living blood, served as the circulatory for all Ekra and took residence under their decayed skin, among their magic-infused muscles. No Ekra could live without a blood mite, for they couldn't breathe, heal, digest, or move unless the mite assisted. The mite split apart and slipped through Eddie's veins, using them as a highway to reach the affected area. The numb tingling of skin built as agony lessened, and though the foot was not healed, the temporary relief would have to do. The sun continued to rise, growing brighter and stronger, and the oncoming heat of dawn stabbed through the trees, a warning that sunlight would soon devour the Ekram's flesh if Eddie didn't find shelter. The way the breeze changed, a sudden shift in temperature from the cool of evening to the dryness of daylight, evoked a thrill of terror. Eddie tested the wounded ankle and, pleased at the mite's work, sprinted on, ignoring small snaps of pain each time the injured foot struck the unforgiving ground. A clearing lay just ahead, but morning light already swathed the grass and shrubbery within. Eddie swerved to evade the light and slammed into a tree, the Ekram's entire right side numbing from the impact. Eddie lost footing and rolled down a hillside, smashing into saplings and rocks, the sheathed scimitar jabbing into the ribs. Loose sod crumbled between the fingers as Eddie scrabbled for handholds. The Ekram's gaze caught the white light of dawn in short glimpses as Eddie slid down the decline. The sun had risen. Time was up. Eddie grasped a sapling with a three-finger hand, and long, yellowed nails dug into the soft bark. Dirt and rocks tumbled past, and when dawn's rays touched a mold-mottled hand, the Ekram bit back a guttural cry of agony. Golden light seared Eddie's knuckles, peeling flesh away like singed paper. Seconds later, Eddie flexed both legs, which were attached to the shoulders, and stumbled into standing. The Ekram ran again, cradling a wounded hand as the blood mite slid into the burnt digits. Eddie avoided looking at the gleaming white bone. The blood mite lurched, sick from the pain and reek of charred flesh, and Eddie's skin bubbled and swelled where the mite worked. Crovaldine lay ahead, beyond a small cluster of crumbling stone towers. Eddie just had to survive long enough to cross the field beyond the tree line and reach safety. At least as much safety as an Ekram could find in a city such as Crovaldine. 2 days ago, bandits had stolen Eddie's cloak, the only protection against the searing anger of the sun, and they'd been tracking the Ekram ever since. Ekra's souls won a high price in illegal trade. Most Ekra were safe within Amuli cities, where thieves rarely ventured for fear of the law, so Crovaldine was Eddie's only chance for survival, the Ekram's last chance to find the one. No other way but to run through the light. If I die, so be it, but I cannot hide another day with them on my tail. They will find me, even in the forest. Eddie cleared the trees and launched forward. In the open, magic could speed an Ekram's pace through the grasses and shrubbery, so Eddie cast a quick spell, calling upon the gods to aid for the race of life. Magical heat surged through Eddie's legs, empowering them. Sunlight flayed the Ekram's flesh, but red and white marbled walls stood less than a quarter-mile away. So close. Eddie was so close. The gates loomed, mammoth in size, yet minuscule compared to the wall of sheer rock that encircled 3/4 of the city. Eddie struck the gates and shrieked for help while pounding against the massive stone doors. 2 Amuli guards, winged, pale-skinned bipedal creatures, swooped from above, their feathered wings thumping against the cold morning air as they descended. Eddie clawed at the smooth stone door, and the fumes of burning rot fogged every thought, pain whipping through the Ekram as Eddie sank to the ground. "Let me in," Eddie begged. "Open the gates!" roared an Amuli. A loud boom shook the air. Ropes and chains creaked as the gates groaned open, showering Eddie with red dust, and the moment a gap appeared, the Ekram squeezed through into the shadow of the city wall. Sweat rolled between two horns and down Eddie's brow. The two Amuli slipped into the city behind the Ekram. Narrowed eyes gazed at Eddie, and they narrowed even farther as the Ekram panted on the ground. Hard to believe these weak-looking people controlled the strongest country in the world. Amuli cities, towns, and settlements blanketed the northern provinces, which grew larger by the year. They were an infection, a scourge the Ekra wished to see fall from power. Eddie recalled harrowing stories of these creatures' numbers and military prowess, of their history of unspeakable violence towards Eddie's people. Countless Ekra had fallen to Amuli greed and expansion, and the Ekra clans retreated farther and farther south until many lost contact with their siblings. Those on the eastern continent of Vastmail had not been heard from in decades. The bastards! Still, the guards had let Eddie into the city rather than let the Ekram burn to death outside, which Eddie supposed should be a reason for gratitude. Recent years had seen fewer Ekra deaths behind Amuli walls, but only because a treaty forced the Amuli Republic to offer shelter to all Ekra who sought it. "Your papers, necromancer," said the guard. Necromancer. Only an Amuli could make that sound like a curse. Far too often of late, Eddie had encountered their detestable attitude, an inherent belief in Amuli superiority. Yet what a queer sight an Ekram must be to them, what with bluish flesh and milky eyes. From Eddie's forehead jutted a pair of short horns kissed with old blood, which cracked and popped like cooking fat from the sunlight. Eddie's long, sharp nails had yellowed from age. Black thread had sewn leathery skin together, and pus-filled wounds speckled both arms, neck, chest, and face where the slabs of flesh met. Even the Ekram's legs must have appeared alien, for Eddie had no hips. The legs joined at the shoulders behind the Ekram's shorter arms, which resembled those of an Amuli. The spine also trailed from beneath the ribs, a horrific sight to one unaccustomed to Ekra's odd appearances. Yes, Eddie must have looked like an abomination. Many had treated Ekra as such. This has been an excerpt from the Soulbound Curse by Kira A. McFadden. Thank you for listening, and follow the links in the description below to learn more about this epic fantasy series.